Hello again, same place, same day, Saturday, Journalville, New York. I'm Deacon Andrei Psarev, and I would like to mention that I was able to make progress on my book, working with the second chapter, and this chapter, this section I completed this week was on the church in Ukraine, something I never really interested in look into, so because it's always branded as PT event, sort of as a rival event when people consecrated their own bishops without having bishops, right? But there is of course context to this, and this context is produced by the events of the Russian Revolution. Whenever things for very transformative things like that happen, there are always a lot of steam going out from what had been previously bottled up. And in the Russian Empire, maybe as it is in the Russian Federation, Russians were considered the major nation, sort of founding nation of the country, and often other nations were treated as junior brothers. The Ukrainian were part of the family, but junior members of the family, and until nowadays people would make fun of the Ukrainian language, sort of as it is inferior to Russian. And yes, Russian language is more elaborated, and there is more literature, and it's more elaborated probably than other South Slav language. But does this really give somebody a reason to feel superior? No, right? And in this sense, often reaction would be, why do you need to have anything in Ukrainian like services, or why do you really need to speak in Ukrainian? You are bilingual, why cannot you why cannot you use a beautiful Russian language? Like one visitor to the monastery, his story I think captured it very vividly. A Belarusian person came years ago to the monastery, and he told me that he, when he was asked what was his name, he said, my name was Levon. And a person in position at the monastery responded, why do you use this name? Why cannot you use Leonid? It's a beautiful Russian name. And for this person, it was actually, it's captured everything, sort of the whole dynamics between a big, huge nation and a smaller nation. And those things then underlined this conflict I'm describing right now, and we are right now talking about 1917, 1921. So I look into two sources, and one of them a book by Deacon Nicholas Denisenko, right? The Orthodox Church in Ukraine. The Orthodox Church in Ukraine. It's published by, I'm not sure if you see it because it was dark, the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, published by University of Illinois, a reputable press. And also, knowing him, he tried to be as objective as he could, and he identified a reason undermining this rift in church ecclesiastical communion, and that reason was very, very prosaic, right? This reason was language, right? So we are dealing with 1917, when Ukraine became an independent country. A military congress in October 1917 also identified an issue of Autocephalist, so it was very, very closely connected with political trends in the country. So then it was at the time when All Russian Council took place. The similar council took place in Ukraine, had three sessions. The first session happened at the beginning of January 1917 and ended because of the Bolshevik took over. right? After the first session, Metropolitan Vladimir of Kiev was brutally martyred, killed on January 25th, and the whole dynamics of those sections was revolving around issue of Ukrainization and autocephaly, because even restoration of the Patriarchate was seen by many Ukrainians or Ukrainian nationalists as an act of possible Russian imperialism. So that because they felt that their dreams about having services in Ukrainian, about sort of having the whole ethos of the church more Ukrainian, sort of they would make a point that Ukrainian culture was different from the Russian culture. The church also has to be part of this. So they also felt it's necessary to, and that's the point where actually they, found a soft spot with me, right? That they really wanted to have a stronger lay participation in church life, and that's why they even called their church Saborna Pravnaya. It wasn't that conciliar. It was probably more democratic than conciliar in a sense, right? Because conciliarity, in my understanding, does recognize the existing church order. You're not really tampering with the structure, with the canons, right? You cannot just, if you want to remain Orthodox at least, you cannot just travel in time and pick and choose what you want. You still work within the inherited framework, right? You can find deeper interpretation. You can offer your suggestions to bishops and asking them to reconsider. But if you start sort of building your church, it's doomed to fail. It's possible that you have all good intentions, right? As Martin Luther had, as former Father Gleb Yakunin, who founded his own church, where he purified things that he believed were not authentic. So, and similar thing happened in Ukraine. And since the rule in Kiev changed hand a number of times, like 11 times since 1917 until 1920. So it's also all reflected in decisions regarding this church. Metropolitan Anthony Khrapovitsky was elected by Diocesan Assembly in May of 1918, Metropolitan of Kiev. He presided over the second session of the council. So Ukrainians reported that actually national-minded delegates were not allowed to participate. There were complaints about how the council was organized, but nevertheless, council decided to petition the Moscow Patriarchate about having autonomy, not autocephaly, and also sticking to Church Slavonic language. And that's something where members of Autocephalist movement disagree, and one of the most prominent one was Archpriest Vasily Lipkovsky. So, and he was part of Petlura Directory, Petlura government, which represented very different people in the Ukrainian politics. They often just lump sum as nationalists. Well, yes, I guess they were nationalists, but there are also many socialists. So it was kind of mixture of various. They were not just fascist type nationalists. There were various people, various agenda. So after the civil war ended in 1920, they continue this process of separation from the Russian Church, and there were attempts to have conversation. And the last attempt happened during the council that this group of clergy, 30 priests, 12 deacons, and a number of lay people and lay women, they had this council in Kiev in October of 1921. The Metropolitan of Kiev left his metropolitanate, was Metropolitan Anthony Kharpovitsky. Moscow Patriarchate respected his title and didn't appoint anyone until his death, because there was an exarch of Patriarchate, which was Metropolitan Mikhail of Grodno. Grodno just recently became part of the Poland, according to the Poles took Kiev with Ukrainian army of Petlura in May of 1920. So then they had treaty with the Bolsheviks and received parts of Western Ukraine, Western Belarus. Grodno became part of them, and Metropolitan Mikhail was outside of his territory because of that. So he became displaced. So he was an exarch, and he should be credited of coming to this council, meeting the people, and both parties weeping, according to Ekam, they were weeping. They kind of probably felt that it was point of no return, but he was adamant about sticking with decisions of 1918 council, but they started to listen more to the people. They had bishops and hierarchy in Moscow, that they wanted to give them some kind of Ukrainian language usage, like for sermons, for reading gospel, and also reading the scripture in a way that it would be more suitable for Ukrainian ear, right? But it wasn't enough. So it wasn't enough, and as a result, at this council there was one scholar. His last name was Tchaikovsky, and he Tchaikovsky. My bad. I'm really sorry. Tchaikovsky, right? And this fellow, he was a graduate of Kiev Ecclesiastical Academy, and he interpreted that before canons, before ecumenical council elaborated that bishops should be ordained by 2 or 3, and from myself a comment, if they said so, there were different instances, because canons, they are not produced just out of discussions and contemplations. They're always based on precedent, on a case. Orthodox canon law is case law, is precedent-based law. So nevertheless, that's how it is right now, since canons already elaborated this, but all their points of arguments were in the time following the apostles, the first 2 centuries after Christ, when the whole terminology presbyter and bishop or episcopos, they were interchangeable, but many things were interchangeable, like heratony and hierothesia. So you can find various examples, if you wish, there in this primitive church order. So they were arguing that basically presbyters, they had similar right to bishops. But my question is this really possible to? Yes, but were those presbyters the same presbyters as those who consecrated Metropolitan Vasily Lipkovsky, right? Or was this just interchangeable terminology used for people who were essentially bishops, right? Because presbyters, like elders, right? Sort of, that's the same sense. But with this kind of serializing, they on October 21st had liturgy, and before reading of the gospel, where usually consecration of a bishop take place, right? The whole congregation kneeled and put their hands on their candidate, which was Archpriest Vasily Lipkovsky. They all read, I believe all of them read this prayer of consecration, women, men, deacons, priests, but also they had access to a relic, think of St. Clement, right? St. Clement of Rome, and they placed a hand of St. Clement or St. Macari, I'm sorry, probably St. Macari of Ulrich, who was killed by Tartars in the 15th century, I think it was happened. So that's how it happened. But what I mentioned, I have soft spots for I have that they had ideas that consecration comes from community, that the will of community, that's something that really very important behind ordination, because right now what happens, basically all ordinations, they are outsourced to bishops and they're totally outside of Christian sort of reach, right? In a sense, it's supposed to be when a congregation says axios, it's a final point, final dot in the process, right? And but how people say axios, they basically saying yes, we trust you, we trust your good choice, and we are saying axios, but we don't know this guy, we have no idea who is he, but we trust since you nominate him, he's going to be good for the church, right? So kind of people are taking away from this, and that's how it has been since time of seminaries, or even before, because a candidate comes to this factory of future priests, and then he directly gets in hands of a bishop, and then bishop sends him whoever it necessary, right? And so they were kind of more, I guess, in tune with the ancient church, sort of pointing out to the will of community. But also this new Ukrainian church was very much in favor of Christian socialism. That's why they had all support from the Bolshevik government, because they were very, how to say, enthusiastic about the revolution. And they sent their candidate to Canada, Jan Teodorovich, and he remained the last bishop produced by this church. But he nevertheless was consecrated in 1949 in New York. Lipkovsky himself was killed during the Soviet purges in 1937. So that's what I learned, that what I wanted, for whatever it was, to share with you. So I hope you found this useful. Please send your questions and suggestions, anything. I really love to hear from you. So I hope all of you are well. Stay in touch. Bye bye. And yes, happy new ecclesiastical year to all.